Whenever someone brings up the apocalypse, there's two quotes that always come to mind. The first one was Adam Smith was having a conversation with someone and they said the nation is ruined, to which he responded, there is a great deal of ruin in the nation. The other one is to have a complete genre change from Men in Black, where in the first movie, the Earth is about to get destroyed unless they can get the galaxy back, and Jay fires his weapon in the street and it alerts a whole bunch of people to their presence. And so Kay says, "We do not discharge our weapons in view of the public." To which Jay responds, "Man, we ain't got time for this cover up bullshit. I don't know whether or not you've forgotten, but there's an Aquilian battlecruiser that's about to." To which Kay replies, "There's always a battlecruiser or Corellian death ray or an intergalactic plague that is about to wipe out all life on this miserable little planet. And the only way these people can get on with their happy lives is that they do not know about it." Now, I guess kind of my interpretation on that is a little bit different, but basically there's always a disaster. And kind of where I started to stop being, I don't know if I am kind of a doomer in a sense, but to stop thinking something dramatic is going to happen is back when I was in university, from 2000, I guess, 7 onward. Like, the world seemed like it was going to end every other week. Like, it looked like in 2007 that Bush was going to launch a war against Iran, perhaps using nuclear weapons before his term ended as kind of a last thing. Maybe McCain was going to come to power and he was going to start a nuclear war. North Korea was doing some stuff around that time and people thought that was finally going to go hot. We had swine flu, avian flu, global warming, which always comes up and they always say is going to end the world in 5 years. And then when 5 years come, they're like, okay, no, it's going to end the world in the next 5 years. We're serious this time. I remember back in school, they made us watch a documentary from like the 80s about how the world was going to end by the year 2000. Anybody remember 2012 and all the people who got freaked out about 2012? Yeah, I barely do either. My point is, these things seem to happen like at least once or twice a year. Something will happen, or there'll be some sort of threat, and everyone will go, everything's going to change. And I'm not saying coronavirus or COVID 19 or whatever you want to call it won't cause major societal change. But my kind of default position after those couple of years when I was in university is to assume that there isn't going to be a dramatic change. Because there was so many times where it was like, oh, Bush is going to establish a fascist dictatorship. They're going to cancel the next election. Oh, the banks are collapsing. This is the end of the global economy. And things maybe changed a bit. They maybe got a bit worse in some ways. But life more or less kind of continued on as it had been. And so, while I'm not saying a fundamental change is impossible, I'm just very skeptical innately. Like, without even looking at kind of the circumstances, my kind of default position is it's not going to happen. And like, even in terms of political movements I've been involved in, everyone's like, oh, NRX is going to win. The alt-right's going to win. Europe's going to have this great nationalist reawakening in the next couple of years and things are going to go back to normal. And while there have been some changes in these various regards, like the fundamentals I think are more or less the same as they were a decade ago. Maybe there's some cracks showing, maybe not. I think the tendency of people to want homeostasis, or rather to just want things to return to what they consider to be normal, is so powerful, especially within the current climate where there's, generally speaking, enough prosperity that people aren't desperate. You have entertainment, particularly pornography, that subdues men and makes them not want to actively go out and try and change anything. The amount of control government, in particular corporations, can exercise over freedom of speech, and just how invested, and not just invested, but unified, I think in a lot of ways, the global elites are in keeping things the way they are. I just find it hard to believe that there's going to be major change. anytime in the foreseeable future. Like I said, the unemployment rate might go up, but I don't think the fundamentals of the system are likely to change. I don't think, like, in the foreseeable future, we're going to have something like 1930s where a bunch of countries become fascist or communist. I can't see the global order collapsing anytime in the near future, or society collapsing, or the current system or clown world ending. I just can't. I think that the desire for things to go on as they are is so strong. As I said, I severely doubt just about anything at this point in time, short of a global thermonuclear war, could result in that kind of permanent dramatic change. So it's kind of, maybe this is a naive position, or maybe it's kind of an anti-realist position, because obviously circumstances change. Like, COVID-19 is unprecedented. We haven't ever had, I think, like a quarantine like this in the modern era. At least not one I can think of on such a global scale. We haven't really seen, the closest I guess we could say is like the Great Depression and Black Monday. I always forget what day of the week it is, but we'll just say it's Black Monday, in terms of how much economic damage has been done. So I guess you could say my generalized empirical observation that these things never go anywhere is put up against my empirical observations of a particular situation. But as I've said, there's just so many cases where it hasn't had permanent, like, fundamental change to the system. Like, the banking system didn't fundamentally change after the financial crisis, and that was a total global disaster. But as I said, I think the people in power are so dedicated, and not just them, but the general public and everybody is so dedicated to keeping things going as they are as long as possible, that I don't foresee any big changes in the future. Like, I think also people have to keep in mind, and maybe just because I'm a bit older than a lot of my viewers, but back in like 2006, they were saying Europe is going to become Eurabia by like 2018 or something. It's going to be a global caliphate, that kind of thing. And I'm not saying Europe hasn't dramatically changed in terms of its demographics, particularly post-refugee crisis, but it's not a caliphate at the moment. It's not Eurabia. It was kind of an exaggeration. I'm not saying things aren't really, really bad, but once again, I think there's a certain hopefulness in all of this, as I've said, that something will happen to end Clown World, that some shock will throw the system, and then kind of the historical narrative will start again. Because we are at the end of history, in my opinion, at least for the foreseeable future. I do think liberalism in Clown World has won, and eventually you'll see Muslim countries becoming liberal. You'll see, who knows if Japan will open up its borders or China will, but I could be being completely naive here. It's just a position I kind of feel obligated to take, because there's been so many times I've jumped on the bandwagon that this is it, this is the big one, it's happening, that it just makes me my default position is just, no, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be business as usual. So maybe that's stupid, maybe that's naive. That's just kind of my thoughts at the matter. So hope you found that interesting, and I'll talk to you guys later.